Good morning and good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Random Trek. I am your faithful captain, Christopher Ingle, joined as always by my trusty right-hand man, Brennan, the mystical Mar, who has turned me into the Admiralty on more than one occasion for breaking the Prime Directive. Brennan, how are you doing?
My name is not Khan, I swear.
Sure, prove it. Let's get a
Mm.
blood sample.
Well, I gotta get
Blood.
blood this week anyway, so.
Vampires. Anyway, yes, today we, as we mentioned last week, are taking a look at Star Trek Into Darkness, the second film in the J.J. Abrams Star Trek trilogy. Yeah, Brennan, I know this one's a little mixed for us, isn't it? Just a little bit.
We'll get there.
We'll get there. But of course, we have to be joined by my trusty Lieutenant Commander, uh, Chris Skywalker Dohmen. I'm not even gonna hesitate here. Dohmen, how do you feel coming back and visiting Khan?
Apparently I'm just the Khan guy, and I love that because Khan very well might be my favorite villain in Star Trek, and I very much look forward to this conversation tonight because yeah, like you two have been alluding to, I also have thoughts and I have some hot takes in regards to this film. Uh which yeah, as I was watching a retrospective on this film earlier today, and it had crossed my mind. This is one of the most divisive films in Trek, period.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And a lot of it I've alluded to multiple times in the past. I really think it's the handling of Khan. And we will get into this, but you know, it could have been really, really good. It wasn't really, really good, but it's not really, really bad. But I think we're gonna get into this. Let's get into this. Let's talk about this. And so we'll go with kind of piece by piece in the film, and we'll break it down similar to how we did last time. So we open up with the Enterprise on the planet Nibiru, and we see Kirk and Bones running through a very pretty red forest. They're running through this forest, and they've got this scroll thing, and they're being chased by natives. Very reminiscent to me of the chase out of the temple by the Javitos in Indiana Jones. Kind of very much reminded me of that. And as they're running, they're talking with each other, and no, I've got a plan. We're gonna make it. Are we ready? Are we ready? And we see them on a communicator as they're running through this forest. They've got this scroll, and what we find out is that Spock, Sulu, and Uhura are aboard a shuttle over a volcano. This volcano is about to blow and is going to wipe this species from the face of this planet. And so Spock is going to go down, release a cold fusion device, and protect these people, all while not being detected. Because if they were detected, it would break the Prime Directive. And we all know that if there's one captain in Starfleet history who would never break the Prime Directive, it's Captain James T. Kirk. Right? Right?
Or basically any of them.
Or any captain.
The Prime Directive sucks. Oh, sorry. Go
ahead.
Whoa.
We'll get there. We'll get there in a minute.
Spock goes down, and unfortunately, the soot and ash from the volcano is causing havoc on the shuttle, and Sulu is forced to abandon the shuttle and Spock down below. They make it back to the Enterprise, but Spock has resolved the fact that the shuttle can't go back and the Enterprise can't be discovered. If the Enterprise is currently, by the way, hiding under the ocean. That's an interesting shot, but it's hiding under the...
with what came out this week, you could have gone for the obvious joke, Ingle.
Could I? Could have I? I don't think so. I'm not going to.
What?
Go ahead, Dohmen, real quick.
Yeah, you could say that the Enterprise is under the sea. Under the sea.
Speaking of divisive, it looks like there's some strong opinions here.
Oh, wow.
Keep going.
Anyway, Yes, at the time of release, The Little Mermaid just came out, and this captain is not a fan.
Mm.
Anyway, and so they make a decision that the Enterprise is going to save Kirk. Kirk demands, we're going to go ahead and do this. We're going to go save him no matter what, because it's Spock. We don't leave a man behind. So they raise the Enterprise out of the ocean, and these people see this and begin to worship the Enterprise. They do. Spock manages to get the device off and is beamed off, so they are safe, and they make it all the way back to report. Let's talk about this cold opening, guys, and then we'll get into the kind of the second cold opening that it has. How do you feel about this Prime Directive kind of theme, actually, that fits in here? How do you feel about it, Brendan?
Okay. The idea of the Prime Directive makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea of Starfleet saying we're going to let a civilization die because that's quote unquote the way the natural world is supposed to be shows that the Prime Directive really kind of stinks.
Mm-hmm.
Because of this whole thing of that way, you can't save these people. Even though they're all about to be obliterated.
Mm-hmm.
It seems a bit cold to me. And as we've seen throughout the history of Star Trek, it might be more trouble than it's worth.
I'm curious, from your perspective, Dohmen, is this not an example of just Kirk again refusing the no-win scenario?
Yes, which is what sets up the beginning of his character arc for this movie, which I do think is one of the strongest points of this film and why I do love it as much as I do, because what this movie does for Kirk does way more. I'll and you know what? Okay, in the course of a single story, this movie does more for Kirk than any of the films that came before, any episode of television that came before, and like I'll burn for saying this, but I stand by it. This was the movie where I finally started realizing, oh snap, Picard has competition for my favorite captain. And funny enough to your earlier point, Ingle, about the whole, the Prime Directive can't interfere. Let me ask you this: speaking of volcanoes and can't interfere with saving a civilization from being killed off, is it just me, or does this opening kind of remind you of the fires of Pompeii from Doctor Who?
It does, and I have to say, it's funny that you mentioned Doctor Who.
Yes,
because so we get this was our opening, but then it flashes back to Earth. And those of you that might be a fan of Doctor Who might recognize a certain Starfleet officer who shows up. We all know him better as Mickey the Idiot. In the first season of Doctor Who, we had Rose played by
Billy Piper.
Billy Piper, thank you. Billy Piper. I always want to say Piper Perabo. I'm like, no, that's not right. It was Piper. Billy Piper, and her boyfriend was this character, Mickey, and he was kind of a bit of a whiny git. And
Season 1, yeah.
Chris Eccleston a couple times liked to call him Mickey the Idiot. And so anyway, so Mickey the Idiot makes an appearance here as a Starfleet officer. And I really, first of all, it's just a nice touch. I love combining my Hoovers with my Trekverse. It is.
I'm ignorant on Who. So
anyway, the thing is, Ingle, after Rose broke his heart too many times, and being married to Martha kind of drove him a little bit nuts. He decided he had to give himself a new identity, travel ahead a couple hundred years just to get away from everybody, get away from Unit, and was like, you know what? I'm gonna start a new family. Let's just do this again.
Yes. The actor's name is Noel Clarke. Anyway, Noel Clarke We see him going through a day with his wife and what have you. We find out is that
Beautiful piano music and
Mhm.
all done in silence.
His daughter is very sick, very sick.
A beautiful sequence.
Doctors don't know how to save her. He gets a message, a message. He kind of goes out onto the terrace of this hospital or this place where one Benedict Cumberbatch, we see him, says, "I can save your daughter." And Mickey agrees. He allows this to happen. He gives Mickey something. It's actually two things specifically. A small package, which we'll get to in a second, and the other looks to be a serum, maybe some blood, an infusion. We'll get to it. We kind of know what it is later, but he hooks that up to her IV, and it heals her. It heals her pretty quickly. It's pretty amazing. And so he kisses his daughter and he goes to work. We find out that he works in London. He works at what we call the Kelvin Archives, but we'll get to that shortly. He goes down below and sits down. He has a ring on his finger. A ring. It looks innocuous. He gets a glass of water. He sits down at his station. He takes the ring off, drops it in, and it creates a chemical reaction that creates a massive explosion and blows up the archives. Just totally decimates the entire archives.
Oddly enough, only killing 42 people, which I think is interesting.
But that, I'm going to call that our cold open number 2. Guys, how do we feel about this cold open number 2? We know a lot less about it, that's for sure, at this point.
I think the sequence is actually quite beautifully done. All done in silence, except for Cumberbatch. Done with this beautiful piano music of the theme, which is gorgeous.
That was Giacchino's idea. Giacchino, of course, working on the score. This was Giacchino's idea that, I've got this score. You should try and do this in silence, with the exception of Khan at one point, I can save your daughter. But of course, we don't know he's Khan. We do.
And it's sort of the deal with the devil kind of thing.
Exactly.
I could save her daughter, but at what cost?
Yeah, no, and that's the beauty of Giacchino, where he has this uncanny ability for most of his scores to be able to have his contribution carry the scene alone. And which does another thing I love about the sequence. So you know how last time I was kind of complaining about how I wasn't a fan of JJ's pacing. This movie corrected that course immensely for the most part. There's still a couple of shaky things, but I really loved the editing for this sequence. I loved Giacchino's score, and the fact that it is done mostly in silence, minus Cumberbatch. It's a great way to like you said, Brandon, showcase that deal with the devil aspect to Cumberbatch's character.
Yep. Well, after that sequence, we kind of shift back to Kirk. Kirk is
at Starfleet headquarters.
Kirk is at headquarters. Kirk is kirking, which means he's getting the girl. It's Kirk. When he gets a call into Admiral Pike's office. Sorry. We'll get to he's in Admiral Pike's office and he's walking up with Spock.
Greenwood. We love Bruce Greenwood.
With very, very militaristic uniforms, I gotta say.
Yeah, it's true.
These grays, these grays that I'm not exactly a big fan of, but
I love it because
you like the grays?
To me, it's a great callback to since this look, we're gonna say it a lot throughout this episode. This movie is more or less the Kelvinverse Wrath of Khan. I loved how JJ and the costuming department went back to Nicholas Meyer's interpretation of the more militaristic outfit and decided to upgrade that for the modern generation. I love that so much.
It's true. It's true. It is very maybe the color's a bit drab, but whatever.
I don't know. For me, the idea that Starfleet is not supposed to be a military, which we will get into this discussion, and so having a very militaristic uniform the way it does, I kind of a little off put about it. Now, I really like that eventually when we go back to the ship, we're back to the red, blue, and gold. And I'm I will always love the red, blue, and gold. But it's just, again, if we're not supposed to be a military, why are we using a very militaristic form? It doesn't
And
quite add up
gigantic-
to me.
I have a theory, but let's
Yeah,
put a
we'll
pin.
get to that.
and
Yeah.
gigantic military hats.
Yes, they are. Anyway, they remind me of the hats from the French Foreign Legion. No joke. Like, if you look at what the French Foreign Legion would wear, and they're so big, that's what it reminds me of.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
No, that's true.
Anyway, so they go into the Admiral's office, and Pike says, "So, mission was uneventful, as you said. Nothing happened at all. Like the saving of a civilization?" And he calls out Kirk and says, "You lied on your official report. You lied. You lose the ship. You're done. You're a risk. You're a hazard."
Because apparently Spock turned him in.
Spock, I was going to get to that. Spock turned him in. Spock told the truth. And this kind of creates a bit of a wedge between Kirk and Spock. Kirk is like, "I saved your life. When a man saves your life, you don't turn him in." And Spock was like, "But you broke the rules. The rules are there for a reason. We didn't have the responsibility to save them if it meant changing the course of their evolution." You know, it begins this wedge and this discussion. And overall, this debate of the Prime Directive, which we believe me, we're going to talk about today. Overall on the Prime Directive. But so Kirk is removed from duty. He is no longer captain of the Enterprise. Spock is reassigned, and you know, things are down for Kirk right now. He doesn't quite know what's going on and what to do. Kirk ends up back at the bar, and who finds him at the bar? Pike. Of course it's Pike. Pike says, "Look, I believe in second chances. I always have. So I've convinced Admiral Marcus to allow you to be my second in command. You will be my first officer." All right, fine. And they get called for a meeting of all the captains and the first officers in that area of the quadrant. Okay, cool. So they all end up back, and they're discussing the destruction of the archive. And as they are,
RoboCop himself shows up.
There's where we meet Admiral Marcus, played by Peter Weller. Very well, by the way. I do enjoy him as this kind of more militaristic admiral. I do. I buy it. It makes sense to me. He's got the character down. In the process of questioning what happened, a jump ship appears and begins to blast the meeting room, killing almost everyone inside except the Admiral, a few who escaped, Kirk and Spock. But Pike is also killed in the process. And this really sets Kirk off. In the process of this happening, Kirk does manage to disable the jump ship, and it crashes. But in the process of crashing it, he sees Khan, and Khan transports out of there.
I believe you mean John Harrison, quote unquote.
Yes.
Let's just not bother.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Anyway, and so what happens is they're trying to figure out what's going on, and Scotty says, "I need to talk to you now," and goes to talk to him, and he's looking at a pad, and he says, "Look at this." He breaks it down, and he says, "This guy escaped using a transwarp beaming device. They stole my technology. They stole everything from me. This guy killed everyone and escaped." This sets Pike off, and he says, "And I know exactly where they went, and it's the one place we can't grow."
You mean Scotty?
Scotty said it, yeah. He's on Kronos, the Klingon homeworld. Wrap. So Kirk goes to Captain Admiral RoboCop. Did you see RoboCop as a future admiral? Just curious now.
Yes.
Think about that.
A full
Yeah.
divine directive.
Assimilate. Wait, that's a whole different one, but I can see him doing that too. Anyway, he's really a Borg. There's your plot line on that one. No, anyway, he says, reinstate me. I can go after this guy. You guys can't go after him on Kronos. I'm already persona non grata. Just give me the ship. Let me go handle this. Let me get this guy. Marcus pulls him aside and he says, all right, here's the deal. I'll give you the ship back. I'm going to send you to go get this guy, but you need to understand the full territory here. This guy is a renegade. This guy he didn't destroy an archive. He destroyed a top secret base known as which is run by Section 31. Now, this is the first mention of it in the movies of Section 31, which is the Black Ops secret covert intelligence section of Starfleet. Yes, Dohmen's very happy about this. We first got mention of Section 31 way back in DS9. And it's kind of DS9 had lots of elements with it. Voyager didn't handle it. Enterprise didn't handle it. Then all of a sudden, now we get it back. So that's always nice. Anyway, but he says, granted. And he says, I want Spock as my first officer. What? Okay, fine, granted. But here's the deal. I'm going to give you some special long-range photon torpedoes that you're going to load in. These are experimental, but I want you to park the ship at the edge of the neutral zone, and I want you to point them at Kronos. Point them specifically at Harrison. And you need to destroy him and get the heck out of here. He's dangerous. This has to be done. This is revenge. He took out one of our own. This needs to stop. Kirk agrees. Well, yeah, let's take a look at this moment here. First of all, let's talk about the death of Pike.
Very well done.
I wasn't expecting it. When I first saw it, really did not think Pike was going to die. I mean,
no, like, I'll put it this way. I would have expected Pike to die at some point, not necessarily in this film, maybe in the next film. I certainly wasn't expecting him to go out so brutally either.
It's cold. And here's the thing. Who's with him when he dies? It's Spock.
It's Spock.
Spock is with him. In fact, if you look, Spock is with him, and when he's holding him, he's even got I don't think he's doing a full mind meld, but he's got him right there. So you can't tell me he's not feeling that death, because he talks about, I had him in my hands. He was in my hands, and he was crying, he was shouting. But I think he means mentally.
Yeah.
Is in but my point is, Spock understood that. And it's amazing how Spock went with this. Spock was like, yes, I'll go. Okay. This is really interesting. This was so brutal, so much more brutal than we've ever really seen in Star Trek. Not like this. We're just slaughtering of innocents. This was a bit of a shock for me. Well, you know what I mean. Those captains and those commanders didn't need to die.
Well, yeah, because chances are of only a handful of the people in the room would have been involved in any regard with Section 31. But yeah, the fact that Khan was just so ruthlessly murdering them all without discrimination, that's cold. And that was where I kind of became like convinced, holy crap, this is we're going there. We're going to some dark places with this sequel, and I love it.
It is. It's all about revenge. And we even get, if you watched it for the first time and don't know what's coming, we get a little foreshadowing on the desk of Admiral Marcus that we didn't notice right away. Admiral Marcus has a series of ships listed. You see, actually, it is a boat. It's not the Enterprise, but it's the Enterprise model from Generations, that the HMS Enterprise. You see different ships throughout history that we've seen in picture form, all the way up to the NX-01, the Enterprise, and then another ship. Never seen that ship before. That's okay. We probably will never see that ship ever again.
No, and it won't be one of the coolest things in this movie. No, not at all.
Oh man, but yeah, no, this whole scene is just so scale tipping for Kirk. And the reality is, who we really have to thank for the JJ verse? It's not Spock. It's not JJ. You know who it is? It's Pike.
Yeah.
Pike has saved Kirk's ass more times than anyone else. He has been so good. I love Bruce Greenwood, and I'm sad this is the last we get of him, because I would have loved to have seen something in the JJ verse that would have truly put him in the chair, not the fake chair we're referencing. But I would love to see where that would have went and how that would have happened. I mean, or even like the menagerie could you imagine the Telosians in the JJ verse?
Jeez.
That would have been neat. I would love that. But this starts, it's kind of a downward spiral. So Marcus does reinstate Kirk and Spock aboard the Enterprise, ordering him to kill. Scotty objects to the torpedoes because he doesn't know what's in them. He won't let them on the ship without it. And Spock says, just do it or leave. And Scotty says, fine, I resign. And Kirk accepts. And Scotty leaves the ship with Keenser, leaving them without a chief engineer. And he loads up the torpedoes on his own. Kirk assigns Chekhov to be chief engineer, which actually fits a fan theory. It does fit a fan theory that in the first season, Chekhov was doing an engineering rotation, which would make sense. It would make sense. Okay. And we are also introduced to a young lady who we come to find out in the end, although she gives a fake name. Her name is Carol Marcus. That's not a name we don't know. Played by Alice Eve.
We'll get to her towards the end.
We're gonna get to her very shortly. Yeah, very shortly. Anyway, Alice Eve plays her, and she is a science officer, and also I believe she's a weapons specialist, is what she says.
In keeping with the original series, the Hot ones were like specialists.
Yeah. Anyway, so
I
they
never understood that.
I don't get it, but they make their way out to the Romulan neutral zone, and just as they reach the border, or the Klingons, they have too many neutral zones. You ever think about they just have a non-neutral zone, just like where everybody gets along and it's totally fine, everything's okay? It's a Starbucks zone. I don't know. Anyway,
it's in the Rocky Mountains.
Franchise.
It's in the Rocky Mountains between the Third Reich and the Japanese Empire.
That's a pretty good joke, actually. A little dark, but it's good.
It's a deep cut.
Anyway, as they get there, the ship breaks down. They can't figure out why. Kirk decides, well, we're gonna go ahead with the plan anyway. Chekhov fix the ship. When we get back, we got to get out of here.
Put on a red shirt.
Yep. So they one of my favorite Easter eggs. They take a vessel that was confiscated in the Mudd incident last month, in reference to Harry Mudd, which like that. I'm very happy with that. And they pretend to be arms dealers. So Scotty, Uhura, two crewmen, two security crewmen, or not Scotty. Guys, I'm tired. This movie actually takes a lot out of me. I'm going to be honest with you.
What was that thing? If your captain is emotionally compromised, you can replace it.
Oh, I might be emotionally compromised, guys. All right, let's try this one final time. Kirk, Uhura, and Spock. You know what? It's Spotty. I'm just going to call him Spotty from now on. Okay? Spock and two security guys go down to Kronos, the Ketha province, which is supposed to be uninhabited, but they get caught by a wandering patrol. And a pretty good escape sequence as they try. That reminds me a little bit of The Fifth Element. Remember the flying sequence that Bruce Willis does? It reminds me very much of that. But
I thought you were gonna say Empire.
No, well, I could see that, but I think you know what I mean too. This idea in between the buildings and the ruins, and they eventually get shot down. They do, and they want to talk, and talk for Klingons means you're gonna die. So Uhura goes out and tries to talk, and again, Thank you so much, JJ. You gave her something important to do because she goes out and she is a badass.
Mm.
Oh, but I forgot to mention, I have to put it this way. Sulu is in charge of the Enterprise and he's very and he sends a
And what a
message.
captain he makes.
He sends a message to Harrison that says, John Harrison, John Harrison, we have torpedoes pointed at you. If you do not comply and turn yourself in within a certain amount of time, we will blow you to Kingdom Come.
Do not test me.
Do not test me. This is non-negotiable. And Bones looks over and goes, remind me not to mess with you, Mr. Solo. Nope. We get a little taste of the kind of captain.
I would definitely like to see John Joe's Captain Sulu.
It would be interesting.
Same.
But, so they're down there. She's Uhura is trying to talk to Klingons in Klingon and doing a really good job. But they grab her and they go to take the knife and they're just about to, mutilate her mercilessly when they're saved by a cloaked figure shooting at the Klingons. Thanks to the cloaked figure, they managed to defeat all the Klingons. And we take the hood off, and it's Benedict Cumberbatch. And he says, how many torpedoes did you say? How many torpedoes? And Kirk tells him, and he says, I surrender. I surrender. And Kirk has a moment where he says, you're under arrest for the death of Captain Pike, my friend, Captain Pike, among many others. And he starts beating the crap out of him, or trying to anyway.
Doesn't get very far.
He doesn't get very far. But they get him back to the ship and get him locked up. All right, so how do we feel about this segment here as we slowly watch Kirk go down a path, an interesting path?
Look, never mind the Kirk stuff, which again, I love it. It's great. But I'm gonna gush now for about 30 seconds, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
I just want to gush because oh my god, the Klingons look amazing. I'm gonna. This might be one of the best designs for the Klingons that we've had on screen ever, and I will stand by that. Like, don't get me wrong, I love the TNG DS9 era Klingons. They're great, but the way they look here is so intimidating, is so alien, and you get the sense that this really is a barbaric race of warriors. And thank God Konos reflects that. I love the design for Konos. It is okay. I'm going to do another Star Wars reference. Sorry, but it reminds me of seeing what Mandalore looks like after centuries and centuries of war and disgusting, horrific atrocities committed. Like, it looks so good.
Well, this is ostensibly a Star Wars podcast, so Star Wars comparisons are just fine.
And by the way, gentlemen, I just realized this month, we are only 2 weeks out from it, or after it, is the 10-year anniversary of
May
this
15th, 2013.
I just realized that as I was thinking about it, like, well, this is 10 years old.
Yep, I remember seeing it in theaters with a buddy of mine from college. Also massive Trek fans, so of course we got there opening day. We got our popcorn, and we kind of knew what was going on with the movie, but we both just had a damn good time. So, all right,
yes,
time's over.
So, they get him back. And kind of really starts what I feel is kind of the worst kept secret in Star Trek history. You've heard me refer to him as Khan, but up to this point in the film, he has not been referred to.
Yeah, can I
go for it, Brennan?
I think this movie's pretty good. The marketing and the attempts of the cast and crew to hide the biggest, what we all knew was coming, the worst secret keeping ever, and some of the worst no one's ever going to know, yet we all knew. It's one of the reasons why I don't like this movie more than I do
Mm-hmm.
is because there is a bit of that sour taste still there. However, that's unfair to the movie itself. But the movie itself is pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
The thing with Khan, worst kept secret, maybe the worst kept secret of all time. I don't know. Maybe.
One of.
And certainly the marketing didn't know favors, and there were a lot of mistakes made. Things said by certain creators
Gary Mitchell.
and actors. Yeah, the Gary Mitchell thing. Actually, I would have thought it would have been more interesting if he was Gary Mitchell, but yeah, I just gotta get that off my chest. Is that the marketing for this film was awful and sucked. I'm glad that the film itself is better, but all this trying to keep a secret when it was so obvious. And then the fact that everybody was posting online, oh yeah, it's Khan. You know, whatever the case was. It was just, it really kind of messed up the experience, I think, for a lot of people. And yeah, they really blew it, I think.
I have qualms with how they handled it. I have qualms with their casting choice. Now, let me be clear. I like Benedict Cumberbatch in this role. Man is a brilliant actor.
Me too. Yeah.
He pulls this off very well. But my problem is a very simple one that really kind of makes me go, what were you thinking? In the original series, we had Ricardo Montalban, a man of Latin descent, portraying a man that was of Sikh descent.
Northern Indian, yep.
Northern Indian. Okay, now, it's not the most appropriate thing. And believe me, there's a whole series that talks about Orientalization and this idea of combining these areas of what are known as the Orient throughout the 18th and from the 18th through the 20th century. This is not an uncommon thing.
Yeah.
This happened back in the 1960s still. Yeah. Even through the 1980s, this was common. Aladdin in 1990 is a victim of that.
Aloha, anyone?
Mm-hmm. But I'm not a fan of that, and I love Ricardo Montalban. I do.
Yeah.
It was a great role, but you set up this character with a certain background. You made a choice, and you did something that was questionable. That is questionable when you look back at the choice of using a Latin actor,
a Mexican actor.
It was very. I'm not going to say stereotypical, but they were using color. They were going off of his color.
It was like, well, we need a guy of color, so
yes, and again, he does a great job. Same way Benedict.
Rita Moreno playing a Thai girl in The King and I.
But if we're to assume that Khan comes from the same time, that this is the same Khan that escaped, and the Khan that we were dealing with in the Wrath of Khan, timeline wise, you could trace that back.
It's true.
You choose a white Brit to play again a Northern Indian. I am not okay with this choice.
Now, and again, I'm not excusing this. All I'm going to say is that there is a tie-in comic that was released just after the film came out that explained that Marcus, when they dug him up, Marcus basically forced Khan to undergo some very serious body restructure so that way he would be completely and utterly unrecognizable from when he was first went to sleep. But it's like,
okay, but again, if I have to go to extra material to get that, I have a problem with that.
Yeah, no, like it's kind of weird when James Bond handled this whole topic way better in Die Another Day.
Which is weird because
that wasn't even really great either. But
again, at least we had it on screen.
Yeah,
just that movie happens to be awful. So
yeah, and that's my main thing with him. And again, I love Cumberbatch. Cumberbatch has got the character down. This is not his fault, but it is bad casting.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the fault of the filmmakers. That's all there is to
Well,
Yeah,
it.
you know,
the
they
whole
needed
thing
a-
about making him Khan is, yeah, it's just
They needed a big name. They needed a big name, I think, is what they went with, and they went with the hit at that point.
mm,
Cumberbatch was doing Sherlock. I don't, I was
Well,
I don't think
Hobbit:
Hobbit was
Desolation of
out yet.
Smaug had not come out yet.
Yeah, it had
but
not, but he was
not
probably already
yet.
working on
Yeah, he
it.
was working
Yeah.
on it. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, this guy, he was huge. Benedict Cumberbatch is huge at this point, so it made sense. We want him and get him, and I get it. But again, from the reasons that I've stated, I think that was poorly managed and a little insensitive. At the same time, I don't know if I would have felt great if they had gotten a Sikh actor to portray it either. Because then I would have went, I don't think there's a win here where I'm gonna win. I just don't. It's a tough character. I would have rather where that was never mentioned back in the 1960s. And I just would have went with it. I would have went cool. But
It was
because
the
it was
time, unfortunately.
it is, I get it. And it exoticizes a lot of things. That's why
It certainly doesn't make it right. It's just back then they thought they could get away with it more.
We just haven't completely escaped it. And unfortunately, this plays into that. There's
Oh,
no
yeah,
win
even
for him here.
nowadays. Yeah.
There's no win from him here. But luckily, he does put in a good performance. A damn good performance. He
Yeah, he
absolutely does.
Very much so, yes.
So we get to he's being questioned. He's being questioned in the brig. And they take a blood sample. I don't know why they chose to take a blood sample right at that point, but boy, isn't that convenient. So they take a blood sample and he says, don't you want to know about all those torpedoes that are sitting in your tubes? I really suggest you take a look at what's inside them. I mean, really suggest. And if you really want to question me, you might want to talk to Admiral Marcus. And so what they do is they beam down to a planet with one of the torpedoes, Dr. Carol Marcus, and McCoy, and they do a little surgery on a torpedo down there. There's a little tension, but when they open it up, they discover the cryotubes.
There's a guy in there,
Cryotube with
yeah.
an individual in. They go back to Khan, and he explains his background and everything. My name is Khan.
Which is the moment I think everybody in the theater went, yeah, we knew that.
Duh.
However, it's a good scene. It's a good scene.
By the way, is he using his best Smaug voice at this point?
Actually, if you look at his face, you could see a dragon in some of his facial expressions.
Just a little bit, yeah. But he kind of explains what happens, and he tells him, "Look, Marcus sabotaged you. If you don't believe me, go to these coordinates, and I'll prove it." So Kirk contacts Scotty and says, "Scotty, I need your help." Scotty's back on Earth. Scotty, I need you to go to these coordinates and help me out. I'm sorry, I was wrong. Please go. And so Scotty goes, and we find out there is something behind the moon of one of the moons of Jupiter. And
something incredible.
Shortly after this, we discover that a Starfleet vessel is coming. They detect a Starfleet vessel. They still can't get going right now. And we are introduced to, I think, the most dark Starfleet vessel I have ever seen. It is the USS Vengeance. The USS Vengeance.
It's a brilliant design.
Is a behemoth of a ship.
Love it.
It is
huge and it's gorgeous.
It is almost the same design as a Constitution class, but bigger and a little more angular. And black. All black.
It's so evil looking.
It is very. It has teeth. And I think Khan even said that. It has teeth. You know, it has
and designed for a small crew.
Yes, it can be run by one person if needed. And of course, who is commanding this vessel? Admiral Marcus.
Dun, dun, dun.
And so there's a showdown between Kirk and Marcus, where Kirk calls him out, and Marcus says, "Man, you weren't supposed to hear that. Look, go ahead."
Can I point out one of the interesting things about this film is that I assumed Khan was the big bad of this movie. But when it was revealed that Admiral Marcus was pulling some strings,
it's kind of Catwoman,
Well, no-
a Catwoman Shrek penguin thing going.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Yeah.
sort of one of those like I will say it did genuinely surprise me.
Yeah.
Because all my focus was on.
Mhm. Yeah. But again, you know,
I mean, you're right. It's maybe an unnecessary character, but
I believe that Marcus is actually probably a realist, and he's on the right side here in the wrong way. This idea, and Dohmen, you and I have talked ad nauseum about the idea of the Star Trek utopia and what it stands for. And the reality is that Marcus is saying, look, peace can't stay forever. We are going to go to war. The Klingons are going to do something. We need to be on the right end of this. He's being protective of the Federation, of Starfleet. He's trying to be within its best interests. I don't believe that he's trying to start a war. He is trying to show that we are not, we can't be, I know where we're going to go with this. I know. I don't think he's trying to start a war. I don't believe that. I believe that he truly is responding in kind to a history that we have seen in the past, before the Kelvin. Think of the first Klingon War. This is a guy that, here it comes. He's just prepping for us. He's prepping for us, ladies and gentlemen. He has the shades ready. Look, my point is that
I'm listening to you.
I do believe that this is a man who truly believes that he is working in the best interest. Now, is he being seditious? Yes. Does he know that what he's doing with the rules the way they are wrong? Yes, he knows that.
He is sort of trying to create a preemptive strike, even though there hasn't necessarily been any provocation.
And he's using Kirk. Because remember, Kirk's not supposed to be out there in the first place.
True.
None of it's supposed to happen. So it's easy to blame Kirk, who's the renegade, the guy who already broke the Prime Directive. He's used Kirk.
That's right, because
he's using Kirk just like he used Khan.
Because their engine blew on them.
But I wonder who did that.
Which was a unexpected sort of thing.
But it was
no, it was not expected whatsoever. It was orchestrated by Marcus. And that's where
unexpected by the main crew.
Sure. But no, like so Ingle.
But it was orchestrated by Marcus.
You're hitting the nail on the head for the most part. But
I was gonna
Marcus all but says, I'm doing this to start a war. I want a war. Because remember, he is the head of Starfleet. And if he gets his war, what's that going to do for him? Consolidate him more power. So he can give the rest of the people in the rest of, the Federation of Planets that utopian ideal. But he also gives more power to the military. He gives more power to Starfleet and basically says, hey, listen, go forth and kill and have fun doing it.
It's what I would call a utopia at what cost?
I can see it. Yeah. All right, I'll concede. No, I'll concede. I don't believe that he's starting a war for evil purpose. Let's put that. He's not evil for evil's sake. There's a reason he's doing
like
this.
The Klingons are our enemies. We've got to get rid of them.
Who's going to do it? Who's going to stop us? Who's going to help us?
Who's going to do it? You,
Lieutenant Weinberg. Actually, you know what? Actually, now that I think about it, there are a lot of similarities between him and Jack Nicholson's character in A Few Good Men. Yes, now that I think about it.
You want answers?
I want the truth. You can't handle it. You don't understand what it takes and what it needs. And while you think my presence is grotesque, my job saves lives. And I think Marcus almost gives that kind of a speech.
Exactly.
Yeah. But he opens fire, the Enterprise, I'm trying to remember the order that he does it, because he beams Carol. He sees Carol's there. Carol tries to stop him because he's going to blow up the ship. And Kirk acquiesces and says, they were following my orders. Do not kill my people, please. This is not their fault. Don't do any of this. And Carol says, let me talk to him. I can stop him. He sees Carol. He beams her off the ship. And then he goes to start firing on the Enterprise. And it's not good. But then the Vengeance shuts down. The Vengeance shuts down. What we find out is that Scotty just bought them about 10 minutes.
Oh yes, we love Scotty.
Scotty bought him 10 minutes. And so basically they go ahead and make a plan that they've got to stop this ship. They've got to stop this. Mind you, they actually, before that, they had already warped out. The Vengeance got to them and stopped them. Then the whole
The
thing
Vengeance was able to chase them, yeah.
Yeah, they were able to chase them and fire a warp, which they shouldn't be able to do. Anyway, Kirk says, I'm going to go after him. I'm going to go take it from the inside. And Spock's like, since you can't do this alone, I'm going to assume you're going to be asking Khan for help. Yup. He says something else, but basically it's, yep, I'm going to ask Khan for help. And so Khan, knowing he wants to protect what's inside those tubes, it's in Khan's interest to help them. For the moment, their enemy is mutual. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. And so they're gonna shoot out of a decompressed bay and fly through space and hit a small juncture point on the Vengeance to get in, basically get into the cargo bay. And it leads to a pretty exciting
the target
scene.
area is only 2 meters wide.
Hey, in my T-16 back home, I've shot, womp rats that are about that size.
Yeah.
Did I do it right this time?
Well, I correct or misquote, but yeah.
I'm terrible at this game, guys. I'll leave the Star Wars quotes to you two. Anyway, but they do get over there with Scotty's help, and they manage to make it aboard.
By the way, two of the bridge crew.
Go ahead.
One of them is voice actor Scott Lawrence. Who's done the voice of Darth Vader since 1994 in video games.
That's correct.
The other is Nolan North.
The voice
Nathan
of
Drake himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're both on the bridge.
That's interesting. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Yep.
That's pretty interesting.
Not Tom Holland. Not that Nathan Drake.
Yes.
Not that version of Nathan Drake.
Yeah. There are a couple other small little appearances too. Heather Langenkamp is in this film too?
Yes. That's right.
Yes.
He's the one alien manning the brig. Yep.
Oh, it's just a neat little one of those, again, another one of those neat little things.
Nightmare on Elm Street, Nancy reference.
Absolutely. Anyway, so he does make it over there. He makes it through. And so Scotty, Khan, and Kirk make their way up into the bridge. They manage to stun everybody, and then Khan gets stunned because Kirk doesn't trust him. But what we see is that stun didn't actually,
as we saw last week on the augment arc.
Augments
stunning doesn't really work as well on augments.
Nice little piece of consistency that is
we were really lucky that way. Yeah.
But what happens is Khan ends up surprising everybody, basically killing all on board the bridge except for Marcus, Kirk, Scotty, and
Carol.
But that death count's going to go up because he gets a hold of Admiral Marcus.
And in a pretty gruesome moment.
Doing his best The Mountain impersonation. If you get my Game of Thrones reference.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Yes, he kills Admiral Marcus by squishing his brain.
Pretty gruesome. You hear the sound.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And Carol sees it.
Well, yeah, she's stuck on the floor with a broken leg.
Because you broke her leg with one hit,
Yeah.
And so Khan says, here's the deal. You're going to give me all of my torpedoes, and I will give you your crew. If you don't, then I will kill everybody on board, and I will kill you. And you basically
walk over your cold.
I will, corpse. And I will take them all either way. So, how do you want to play this, Spock? He's talking to Spock, and he says, "All right." Spock says, "Doctor, prepare the torpedoes," and they say, you're not gonna. Bones is like, you're not gonna give it to him. He's like, I have an idea. And then we cut over. He ends up getting all the torpedoes over, and he agrees to beam them back, but he says he's not going to keep them alive. So he has every intention of destroying the Enterprise.
After all, no ship should go down without her captain.
Oh,
Yes.
excellent line. Excellent.
But mind you, by the way, when they warped out, they're near Earth. They are near Earth at this point. I have to say that because the final act, it makes sense.
But of course.
But the torpedoes are over there. Han sees all the torpedoes, but what he doesn't realize is that they're all armed and they all blow up.
And the cryotubes have been removed.
Well, yeah, that was the
spoiler.
Spoiler.
Oh, I see. You're out of the. Okay.
Yeah, Kirk's like, you didn't do it. You didn't. There's no way. He's like, Khan may be cold-blooded, but I'm not that. Spock's not that cold-blooded. I have all of Khan's crew, and we see in the med bay all of the cryotubes have been taken, and it was just the torpedoes.
Apologies, I pulled a Robert Meyer Burnett and I spoiled it.
But it disables the Vengeance. But the Enterprise is still pretty beat up as well in this process, in this fight. The Vengeance begins to crash, land into Earth, but he sets a course. He does. It begins to crash. Well, go ahead.
You're jumping a little ahead, but
go ahead.
No, I was just saying you were jumping a little bit ahead, but
yeah. Well, it's already been disabled. It's already been damaged. It's already been damaged. And at this point, they're over the Earth, right?
And both ships are falling into the
both ships. Yeah, they start to lose it. Khan says, he tells the computer, Starfleet headquarters. He's going to crash land and destroy Starfleet. Or what he presumes is the destruction of his crew, because at this point he thinks he's the last one.
By the way, to clarify, I'd forgotten the order of the scene.
Go ahead.
Well, that's why I thought that the cryotubes had already been. I've forgotten what order the scene was presented in.
Yeah, he took them over before they were beamed over.
Yep.
But the Enterprise is also damaged and begins to fall into the atmosphere. They do manage to stabilize and not crash, but the Vengeance does. Vengeance crashes into San Francisco Bay, and then crash into lots of buildings, causing tons of damage. Poor San Francisco.
Yep. And of course, the Enterprise escapes at the last minute.
They do. And they manage to stabilize, but Khan lives. Khan lives. Khan does live, and he jumps out, and he's going to try and escape. But they realize now here's where the Enterprise's part comes in, why it was crashing. The damage that was done to it has caused damage to the core. Okay. Before we get to this final section, because I think we're going to have a lot to say on this, let's talk about all this buildup and this really turning Khan into the evil man that we know him to be. How do we feel about this sequence?
Good God, I love it. The tension is palpable. I love the back and forth, and I love how when that while Kirk's not able to necessarily stay a step ahead of Khan, it does show that throughout the story he has actually servants, or that throughout the films so far he has picked up enough to know how to at least stay even with Khan. He knows he can't beat him in a conventional fight, but if he can catch him by surprise on the bridge, that's in telling Scotty, hey, when we get to the bridge, stun him. That's a nice, clever little thing. I like that. Khan's utter massacre on the bridge. Oh my God. Love it. So good. And like, again, the battle of wits, I would say, between Spock and Khan is incredible. And you did leave out a very important moment here, Mr. Ingle.
Go ahead.
While Kirk and Khan were running around on the Vengeance, Spock had to make a little phone call. Oh,
I forgot about the phone call. It's quick, but I forgot about it.
To another
and
Kirk.
I loved this so
so
much.
yeah, I'll let me fill him in. So yeah, before they finish kind of the coup d'etat and he starts going down, Spock does make a phone call to Vulcan Prime, the new Vulcan. And he calls Spock Prime. And he says, "Tell me, did you ever meet a man named Khan?" And Spock Prime says, "I've promised never to tell you anything that could affect your future. You need to figure things out on your own."
That being
He
said,
Khan is the most dangerous adversary the Enterprise ever faced. He is ruthless, vengeful, and will not hesitate to kill. And Spock asks Spock, "Did you defeat him?" "At great cost."
At great cost.
great coast.
Referencing, of course, his own death. Of course. So that sets up where we're going to go next.
Mm-hmm.
So, and unfortunately, the last role by Leonard Nimoy.
Last appearance, yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
And then
Which,
the next film
honest,
is
which no, I was just gonna say, funny enough, it actually only happened because the crew wanted to get Shatner basically for that part, but because they couldn't get him for it, they were able to ask Nimoy to come back for that brief scene.
Yeah. Cool. Anyway, so the Enterprise is damaged. The core is not functioning right. Someone has to go into the core to repair it. Initially, Chekhov says he'll do it, but he gets the Enterprise starts to tilt and fall, and it loses its ability to be upright, basically. And so the only person who can go in at that point is Kirk. Kirk goes into the core, and we see that the core is misaligned. It needs a little help. So he climbs up
and there's no time to put a radiation suit on.
There's no time to put a radiation suit on. He goes up to the core and he starts kind of kicking it into place as hard as he can to get it working, which he eventually does, but it hits him. And he gets basically doused with radiation. The ship comes back to life and it stops its descent at the last second and is able to get back up into orbit, but at great cost. So we now we're kind of side by side here. Spock wants to stop Khan, needs to stop Khan. So he beams down to the planet because they can't beam Khan up. That makes no sense to me, but okay. They beam him down. We get a chase through San Francisco, which is really good chase. Again, absolutely. This also, in a way, reminds me of the chase scene in Minority Report. Again, some of these sci-fi kind of references and adventure references that play into this, but yeah, he chases him through it, ends up on a garbage kind of thing, and they start fighting each other. And Spock is trying to take out his life. Spock wants revenge because Kirk is presumed dead. Yes. I was gonna get there.
Yeah.
I was gonna get there, man.
Spock
did come across across Kirk, but seeing him dead, yes, he did let out the obligatory call, and that's one of the reasons he's going after him. But what we discover in sickbay, after Kirk is dead, that Kirk is declared dead.
Oh boy.
We discover that Khan's blood, which references all the way back to the beginning of the movie, is super blood. Anybody order an egg MacGuffin?
What are you doing with that tribble?
He injected a tribble with Khan's blood to see how it would react and what it would do. I don't know why he did that, but he did. And he discovered that it could bring dead cells back to life. So they need Khan. If they kill Khan, they can't bring Kirk back. So Uhura beams down and helps subdue Khan at the last second, stopping Spock from killing him. They get him back aboard the ship. And the next thing we know, we see Kirk waking up. And we find out that indeed the super blood did work. A great line from Bones. Are you feeling despondent? Homicidal tendencies? Or what did he say? A chronic narcissism? No more than usual. So he was saved. He was saved by the Khan blood. Khan was put into stasis along with the rest of his crew. They honor the loss of Christopher Pike, and Kirk is fully reinstated. Everything is back to normal, and they get their 5-year mission. The 5-year mission to boldly go where no one has before. That's about it. How do we feel in this ending? This switcheroo.
I'm gonna let Dohmen go first.
Go ahead.
No. We're saving me for last.
What do you want me to go first?
Go for it.
Okay. The alternate retelling of the switcheroo on who dies due to radiation poisoning in the core, and the Khan. These are moments I don't like. I don't.
Like it either.
I think that they're way too on the nose and terribly unoriginal. Now, there's nothing wrong with having a bit of fun with Star Trek lore. I think it could have been handled better. I just felt that those moments were a bit like, it's like, we get it. You're trying to remake Graphicon, but we don't need to hit exactly the same beats.
I'm with you.
The super blood at the triple. I mean, you can't have Captain Kirk die, so.
Why can't you?
Well,
we let Spock die.
Well,
hey, look,
no
I'm being real here.
For all of one film.
We have let Kirk die.
As I was
we have
saying
let Spock
before
die.
I was interrupted. Sorry, you might have triggered salty me. As I was saying, before I was interrupted, there was no way they were going to kill Kirk off on the second film in this telling without some miraculous way of coming back. I suppose I'm glad they didn't make us wait a whole movie. But I figured that there wasn't any way that they weren't going to come up with something to bring Kirk back within anyhow. That's beside the point, I guess, because that stuff I don't mind. The switcheroo with the death of Kirk and the Khan thing and the core and the radiation and I really don't care for it. So that's it.
I don't like the handling of this. Plain and simple. As you said, it was too on the nose. There are parts of it that could have worked. Like if Khan being revealed was truly a surprise, the switching of Spock and Kirk could have worked. Especially with that opening. It could have worked. And you didn't have to have the Khan thing. The Khan yell, I think even back then, was a little overdone. I'm not the biggest fan of it. Even though that was, by the way, my notifications alert on my phone for years.
It had also become a joke by then.
I know. I
instead
love
of adding to the drama, it kind of takes away from it.
I'm so torn because this Kirk, I love that Kirk has learned he, for that moment, accepted the no-win scenario.
Okay, that's true, yes.
And I love that aspect of it. For this Kirk, that makes sense to me. Absolutely 100%. And I like that. But when you throw in everything else, it salts it. It just makes it so ugh. But then when he beams down, I love that chase sequence. That chase sequence and fight with Khan is good.
It's true.
But then we're gonna change. We're gonna heal or super blood. So, oh God, guys, what it is to me is that you didn't have a solution in how to solve this. And I'm going to say it right now. I think that opening with Mickey the Idiot was conceived only because they couldn't conceive of an ending. Plain and simple. I think the ending came and they went, we need something to save Kirk, but we have to establish it early on. So they come up with this whole quick story about saving a little girl's life, but in return, like it's the idea of the plot servicing the ending instead of the ending servicing the plot. It was aggravating to me. This has so much potential to it, and there are good elements to it, but like any good soup, if you add too much salt, I don't care what else you added to it, it sucks. This third act is not a good third act at all. And I have a salty egg McGuffin because of it.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you know this old song and dance, grab your popcorn and grab your drinks because it's rant time.
Is it salty
Well,
popcorn?
we only got about 15 minutes left. So.
Is it salty popcorn?
Oh, don't worry, Brandon. I'll keep this brief.
And Nick and Joe.
So, I love this movie. I do. But this is one of the rare times in a Star Trek film where I know I have written a better ending for this film than what we got. Now, granted, how we conclude Kirk's arc with him finally accepting death, and just that little moment during the switcheroo as we're dubbing it, the whole ship out of danger, yes, but yeah. But when he actually says, "I'm scared, Spock," that hits my soul right there. Like his delivery there just like hits me so hard. Now, I'm fine with the Khan yell. It's dumb. Whatever. It's kind of like Vader's no in Revenge of the Sith. Whatever. It is what it is. Plus, it actually is kind of cool how they cut from the Khan into the Vengeance flying right underneath the Enterprise. That's a really cool little sound design. I love that. Here's my main problem with this ending. Han got caught. Han should have got away. And I'm dead serious when I say that. That is the single biggest missed opportunity of this JJ trilogy. Because you know what? I'm just going to say it. This movie set up way more interesting stuff that is not even touched in Beyond. And that's partially why I don't like Beyond as much as I should. Because I'm sorry, Into Darkness set up what should have been an incredible follow-up. And we were getting there. We were getting there with the whole Carol Marcus situation. What was this? Did this mean we were going to do David in the alternate timeline too? What about Spock and Uhura? How was their relationship going to pan out? Like, we were setting up so many neat little things that could have built up something more. Hell, the war with the Klingons, because obviously we didn't get that, but we sure as hell were trying to make it happen.
Yeah, you mentioned it. They pissed off the Klingons enough to. You think there would have been repercussions.
And Beyond doesn't touch any of it. Because and this would have been like the perfect way to make all of this happen if you let Han get away. Hell, I'm gonna give you my 1 minute version of how this ending should have gone down.
Man, take your time. Okay.
So Kirk still dies. And you know what? And because I'm nice, he is still gonna come back because of the Khan blood thing. That makes sense to me. I'm fine with that. That works. But don't play it like they do in the film. Have it be a last desperate thing. Where they're like, they have like, I can't think of anything else. Like we tried to save him. This might be it, though. This might be it.
Because you're right, it is a bit anticlimactic when he wakes up.
It is a bit anticlimactic. Whereas, but here's the last thing. So the last bit of this film Khan gets away, and look how he gets his crew back. I'm not sure. Well, I did have this idea more fleshed out, but I'm in ranty mode. So, but the point being though, for the next film, now that we've introduced our villain, let him be a villain for your next film.
Mm.
And that was the biggest wasted opportunity of them catching him.
I just realized something really stupid, and maybe I'm going to throw it out there. They have 70-something genetically perfect humans lying in cryotubes all along your sick bay. Please explain to me why you have to have Khan's blood.
Ha! Okay, fair enough. You know what? Then double down on my point. Khan still should get away then, because then, oh, hey, look, we have 71 other body bags. Let's just use one of them.
I'm just saying, and I know that some could argue it, but I just, again, the whole Khan blood thing, this is stupid. This is so stupid. And this whole, we've got to save him. When you don't have to save him, you could have let him go. I don't know, man. Look, I've written stories too where I thought with the third movie I would love to have seen Khan return, or even a potential fourth movie, where we have Khan return. And it's not beyond the realm of possibility, if one should happen, where Khan couldn't be brought back for one reason or another. What baddie could potentially be worse than Khan in the original series? I don't know. But could it happen?
But that's it.
The Borg? Oh, please no. God, no. I hope not. Anyway.
Whatever creeps out our dear brother Nico, right?
But look, in the end, this is a very weak point to it. And there's one more thing I want to discuss, and then, of course, we got to close it out. And that starts us out with the question of the Prime Directive. That in all essence, pushed this thing into motion here. Because if Kirk wasn't stopped after his event on that planet, none of this would have happened. Kirk would have still been in command. I don't think a lot of this would have happened. So here's my question. Is the Prime Directive in the Star Trek world necessary? Should it be more like Stargate, who was clearly anti-Prime Directive, and they made jokes about it all the time?
Mm-hmm.
Do we have a responsibility as the human race to interfere for what we believe is the betterment of civilization?
Hmm.
When it's not our actual, or I'll put it this way. And I'm gonna answer this in universe as best I can, because I don't want to get too real world with this, because I could very easily get real world with this. The answer is yes, we do still need the Prime Directive, because it's not necessarily right to play God with the lives of others without their knowledge, without their understanding, without their consent, without their support. If we're just going, if we in the Federation are just going around to other planets and basically making their choices for them, that's kind of screwed up on a lot of levels.
Mm-hmm. Brennan?
It's a tough question to answer. I think that sometimes the way Star Trek frames it is terribly inconsistent.
Mm-hmm.
And on occasion, just stuff where it's like, yeah, it doesn't make sense to me. But I think that when you're dealing with a show that has nearly 900 episodes, not everything is going to always be consistent. And as far as, I think that in general, yes, I agree with Dohmen. Though, and I think when it comes to a civilization being destroyed by a volcano, I don't know. but I don't know if there is an answer. So it's tricky, and it's just hard to say.
I will be a daring person and a daring captain, and I will answer this in a modern context.
Mhm.
All right.
I believe that the idea of the Prime Directive is a good thing. We shouldn't inflict our will upon the world. And I mean this too. You can look at us. Obviously, we're from the US. I don't believe in inflicting that will and our belief structures upon the world. However, there have to be times where common sense and I say this, but even speaking as a in Star Trek context, I say human rights, but not unironically, as in like Star Trek 6, where they say, listen to yourself, human rights. That's not what I mean. But I mean
Inalienable rights.
Inalienable rights. Yes. There are basic things that more people need to, and we need to step in to protect people, to help people. Basic things. We don't have to interfere with culture, but we can protect people from people who are infringing on those rights from others. We have a responsibility to do something like that. And
There
that,
are many examples of that, yes.
and in that, I think the Prime Directive is wrong, because by that definition, Starfleet and the Federation would never get involved in any place where that's occurring. But, you know, we could go into tons of examples where captains have almost gone with or didn't go with the Prime Directive and just let things happen. And it's ridiculous. And this happens here on our very planet all the time.
Yep.
And I think something needs to be done.
Which is why I did make sure to say that, you know, it's only in the cases of if you're dealing with a civilization or a species that is either unable or unwilling to provide any form of like communication to, so that way they can at least understand what the hell is going on. Because if everything is a, you know, because yeah, no, of course the Federation should absolutely protect its own planets. It should be able to protect you know, allied planets that aren't necessarily inside the Federation. Hell, they should even offer help to neutral or enemy planets if they are requesting for it. Where I do draw a line though is like, okay, draw a line is not the right word I'm looking for. Where I have questions abound is when things are getting into the gray area of the cold open of this movie. Because I don't know if they should have interfered with that planet at all. Because would the natives have had any ability to properly communicate what with our crew?
I will put this hypothetical out there, and then we'll close it out with final thoughts.
All right.
What if, this is a pure what if the human race was that species? I'm just speaking hypothetically. If there is existence out there, and what if the human race was saved and we are what we are today because somebody interfered?
Now, in fairness, if it just happens and you don't get caught doing it, then hey,
Yes.
who's the wiser?
It's a good point. But as we see, one of the major religions in this on this planet is Christianity. And I'm just being hypothetical. You're a Christian, Brennan. I am as well. What if our faith came from that level of interference? It's a huge what if, don't get me wrong. Very a little blasphemous at times. But again, in the terms of Star Trek,
I don't think it's blasphemous at all.
It's an interesting question. You know, that we ask ourselves in Star Trek. In Star Trek, we tell ourselves the Prime Directive is okay, and yet we as humans potentially could have been allowed to continue because of someone breaking some equivalent of that accord. It's just an interesting mind thought.
You never know. Yeah.
Never know. But final thoughts on this film.
I love
it. Yeah, I'll let you go first.
It has issues. Like I said, I know I could write a better ending than what we got in this movie, because Yeah, Lindelof still has never really impressed me with anything. Sorry, man, but one day I'll learn to like you as a writer.
Watchmen?
In case you're watching, look, I'm sure you're a wonderful human being. I just don't care for your writing.
Even
But
Watchmen?
but the the acting, the editing, the score, basically most of the storytelling and some of the additions to the lore here are fantastic. And I have to give the movie so much credit for that. And plus, look, I'm a Section 31 stan. Deal with it. You all you have to say is the word Section 31 and my blood pumps a little faster. Hell, one of my favorite Star Trek fan films deals with a lot of Section 31, and I am here for it because it's so good. Thank you, Star Trek Helena Chronicles. I loved you for bringing Section 31. You were awesome.
Yeah. Brennan.
Putting all the troubles of the marketing aside and all that shenanigans.
Yeah.
And the fact that this film is a little weak at the end. It's a pretty good film, I would say. See it, is what I would say.
There are ingredients in this film that I really like. Unfortunately, as I said, there's a little too much salt for me. And salty stew is salty stew. And maybe the beef is tender and it's perfect. But if that broth don't work, you're in trouble. And for me, that's what this film is. It's salty stew. It needs a lot of help. It does. It isn't inherently bad by itself. And maybe some people like salty stew. I'm not a salt kind of guy. And so for me with this film, I think it's too much like its predecessor. And yet it's trying way too hard to not be its predecessor. This is where you needed to find the middle ground, and I just don't think they hit it.
Mm-hmm.
I recommend to see it once. It's a good action film. Very good action film. But beyond that, I could do without it. And so far, there are no other ramifications to this film in the JJ verse that really tell me I have to see this.
Yep.
All right. Well, next week, we take a look at Star Trek Picard. And we get to look at what I believe is the best episode of the first season, Nepenthe. Nepenthe, with the return of one Captain Riker.
Don't worry, that episode's pretty good.
I think it's pretty good.
I think the episode's pretty good. The season, that's a whole different story.
No, but I do like this. So we will be taking a look at Nepenthe next week here on this episode. Dohmen, where can the people find you?
You guys can follow me all across social media at Skywalker Dohmen. You guys can follow my band Last Shot at Redemption all across social media at Last Shot MN. We're starting to get more active on our TikTok, so keep in touch with us there.
Brennan.
You can follow me on Twitter, Brennan Mystical. You can follow us here under the umbrella of Page Turners They Were Not on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow us here on Random Trek and on all our various social media, various social group shenanigans.
And you can find me on Ingle 1984 on Twitch and Twitter, where during the month of July, I will be doing Star Trek month, playing Star Trek games. I've actually just purchased the brand new Star Trek Resurgence, which I'm not touching until I play it. I want to play it and experience it as it happens. So I'm very excited. Reviews have been mixed and okay on it, but I'm looking forward to it. Among other Star Trek games that we'll be playing during that month. So keep an eye out. As we will be putting some of those on this YouTube channel. All right. But as we end every episode, and live long and prosper.
Peace and long life.